Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2017 NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Tournament simulation. Now, this is a simulation of the NCAA March Madness tournament, which is in March, but this is called May Madness because it's in May. Kind of obvious. This is a selection show for the tournament, which will be held on NBA 2K17 with the college roster made by Skill as Kill on the PlayStation 4. Now, this is the selection show from the NCAA Bracket Committee to reveal the bracket of the tournament, which will be held this next upcoming week on Thursday, which will be the first four. Now, let's begin with the reveal of the tournament. We've been waiting a long time for this. Let's begin with the reveal of the 68-team tournament bracket. All credit goes to Skill as Kill for creating the NBA 2K17 college roster. Thank you to him for allowing us to do this tournament. Let's begin with the reveal of the East region. Let's begin. The overall #1 seed in the East region, you guessed it, the Villanova Wildcats. What an exciting run from them throughout the season. Basically being the #1 seed throughout the whole tournament, or throughout the whole season, and then coming into the Big East tournament with a mission to win it. And you know what? They did. Big East tournament champions definitely got them qualified to become the overall #1 seed. They pretty much stomped right through Georgetown in the quarterfinals, stomped right through Marquette in the semifinals, and then in the championship game of the Big East tournament, they almost lost to Xavier, but they won that one. So the Big East champions as the #1 seed. And who will Villanova be playing in the first round of the tournament? Well, it's the first four match between Georgia and Central Michigan. Now, what a match this will be. I mean, these two teams are pretty evenly matched out. Georgia and Central Michigan. I mean, Central Michigan won their conference, but their conference isn't a very big conference. So I think that's why they got the 16 seed on this one. And Georgia didn't have a very good tournament either, but they did beat out the teams that wanted to come into the tournament. But remember, Georgia. Oh no, fine, well, whatever. Okay, for the next matchup, the 8th seed in the East region, the Dayton Flyers out of the Atlantic 10 Conference. Dayton, to many people, it looked like they would win the Atlantic 10 Conference, but in the semifinals of the tournament, they did lose to the Rhode Island Rams, who would go on to win the tournament. Sadly for Dayton, that would have actually bumped them up higher in the seeding, but it actually knocked them down in the bracketology before the conference tournaments began. They were a 7th seed, but now they're an 8th seed after the tournaments. And who will Dayton be playing? Dayton will be playing the Razorbacks of Arkansas out of the SEC. Now, Arkansas also could have had a way higher seeding in the tournament, but in the first round of the the first game that they played in the SEC conference tournament, they lost to Auburn, who wasn't even supposed to really make it through Ole Miss. Arkansas did not have a good SEC performance. They lost in their first game, and that's what brought them here. And man, oh man, will that be a heck of a game as well. Now we'll move on to the next portion of the East region. What the heck is that? Never mind. I'm sorry. But we'll go. Who is the 5th seed of the East region? The West Virginia Mountaineers. Not a very good performance from them through the Big 12 tournament, but they still did move up in the rankings. No, actually, no, they moved down in the rankings. Not a very good performance in the Big 12 tournament, losing in their first game to the Texas Longhorns, who they should not have lost to. They just had an off day. So have to see what West Virginia can do in this tournament, being a 5 seed now. And who will they play? They will play the Colorado Buffaloes out of the Pac-12 region in their first game against Arizona in the quarterfinals of the Pac-12 tournament. They did upset Arizona, which would actually make Arizona go down in the rankings as well, which isn't very good for the Wildcats. We'll have to see what Colorado can do in their first game against West Virginia. Who is the 4th seed in the West region? The Minnesota Golden Gophers. This team is really good. They're out of the Big Ten, and they had a phenomenal Big Ten performance in the Big Ten tournament. They had a really good performance in the Big Ten season, and then they beat Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament, and then they also beat then they lost to Michigan, but they lost by 1 point. This team is looking strong. They looked really strong, and I think Rick Pitino can do really good with this team. Who will they play? They will play the Alabama Crimson Tide, a very good football team, but not a very good basketball team this season. They had a really bad struggle in the SEC. They did make it out of their first game against Mississippi State, which actually gave them a chance into the tournament, and then they lost to South Carolina, who would go on to win the SEC. So you can take a look at the bracket right there for the 5-12 and 4-13 match. But we'll move down to the bottom half of the bracket as we go Who is the 2 seed for the East region? That's the Oregon Ducks. A phenomenal Pac-12 tournament performance, allowing them to become the Pac-12 champions. Man, they're looking so good. And man, oh man, I just can't wait to see what they can do in this NCAA tournament. And if they can make it to the Final Four for the first time in 78 years, that would be phenomenal. But they have a really tough team to face if they do make it. That's the Villanova Wildcats. Who will Oregon be playing? They will be playing the 15 seed San Diego State Aztecs. Usually this team is ranked higher up, but since they did not have a good season this season, they are not ranked very high. But they did win their conference tournament, so they're still in the tournament on an automatic bid. We'll have to see what San Diego State can do, though. They have a really tough matchup against Oregon in the first round. The 7th seed in the East region, the Cincinnati Bearcats, who should have a higher ranking, but they did beat UConn in overtime in the American Conference Tournament, and then they did lose to SMU in the championship game. I think Cincinnati had a really good performance in the American Conference, but I don't think it was enough to buy over the selection committee. Who will they be playing? They will be playing the Seton Hall Pirates. Not a very good tournament performance in the last couple years, and last year they came out as the 6th seed, expected to go far in the Midwest region, maybe to even play Michigan State in the Sweet 16, but Seton Hall lost to Gonzaga in the first round, which did not give them a very good performance, and also Seton Hall would have gotten a higher ranking if it wasn't for their loss to Marquette in the quarterfinals in their first game of the Big East tournament. So Seton Hall will be playing Cincinnati in the first round. Who will go higher up in the region? The 3 seed in the East region, the Louisville Cardinals. My goodness, this team really slacked as of late at the end of the season. Just not a very good performance from them at the end of the season. I mean, they lost to teams like Notre Dame, which is acceptable, but they lost to teams like Virginia Tech. And then in their first game of the ACC Conference Tournament, they lost to Duke, which actually made them lose the 2 seed. And who will Louisville be playing? They will be playing the St. John's. I don't know what their name is. I'm sorry, but they will be playing St. John's in the first round matchup. This St. John's team, they had an okay season. I have to admit they didn't have the best season that they've had in the past, but I think they can totally pull off the upset against Louisville here. So now we'll move on to the 6-11 matchup, the 6th seed in the East region, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I feel like a lot of people are thinking that they should be a higher seed, but their performance in the ACC tournament was not very good. Losing in their first game of the tournament to Georgia Tech, that was just not a good thing for the selection committee to witness, and Notre Dame did lose their seeding. And who will Notre Dame be playing? Notre Dame will be playing the winner of the first 4 matches between Michigan State and Wichita State. Now, these two teams are really evenly matched up. Michigan State has a very good coach, Tom Izzo, and has some really key star players, and Wichita State has a super good team. They have a lot of experience in the NCAA tournament, and they can go far in this tournament. Now, let's take a look at the full top half of the bracket in the East region. As you can see, I'm just gonna say what I see in this bracket that can really go far. I see a potential Sweet 16 matchup between West Virginia and Villanova, a really good matchup. But also, I see a potential upset on West Virginia. Colorado did upset Arizona in the Pac-12. They could totally upset West Virginia if West Virginia lost to Texas. I also can see Minnesota going pretty far. I can see them going to the Sweet 16 and maybe even the Elite 8. Minnesota looks really good in their matchup, but they're gonna have to watch out for Villanova in the top half of the region. Move down to the bottom half of the region, and I see out of this one, I see a potential first round upset for St. John's over Louisville. I don't think Louisville has had a very good ending of the season, and I think that St. John's can totally pull off the upset against Louisville in this matchup. But if Louisville does come out, I see a potential ACC matchup between Notre Dame and Louisville, which could be very good. But then also I see Oregon, a pretty simple road to these Elite 8. I think the only two really problems that they have, well, the only problem they have in this bottom half of the bracket is Notre Dame. If Notre Dame can move on that far, and if Notre Dame can beat Louisville, they can. But then I see a potential Elite 8 matchup between Oregon and Villanova, which could be a really good matchup. Big East champions and Pac-12 champions. We'll have to see what happens. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go back into the West region. Then we're going to go into the Midwest region. I'm sorry. And we're going to reveal the second out of 4 regions for you. We'll be right back. We are back with the May Madness selection show. We've revealed 1 out of the 4 brackets, and that was the East region. But now we are going to reveal the 2nd out of 4 brackets, or regions. That'll be the Midwest region. Let's get straight into it. To start out in the Midwest region, we have the 1 seed, which is the 2nd overall 1 seed, and that is the Kansas Jayhawks. What a performance from them in the regular season. If it wasn't for them... if it wasn't for them losing in the semifinals of the Big 12 tournament to Oklahoma State, they probably would be the overall number 1 seed. But Villanova did have a really good competition. And who will Kansas be playing in this match? Ohio State / Pittsburgh. Another first 4 match. Another 16 seed first 4 match. This is the last 16 seed first 4 match, which is Ohio State and Pittsburgh. And Ohio State, they have a lot of experience in the tournament. Actually, the last time that these 2 teams got 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament, I think that was the 2011 NCAA tournament when Pittsburgh got the 1 seed but lost to 8 seed Butler in the 2nd round, and Ohio State also got the 1 seed, the overall number 1 seed. Well, that's the first matchup of the Midwest region. We'll move on to the 2nd match, the 8th seed in the region, the Vanderbilt Commodores. A great, phenomenal performance from Vanderbilt in the SEC Conference Tournament. Vanderbilt managed to beat Texas A&M, not surprising, in their first match. Then they moved on to the quarterfinals to beat the Florida Gators, to upset them, and then move on to beat Auburn in the semifinals, who upset Arkansas. And then they lost by one solitary point in the SEC Championship game to South Carolina. It's sad that they did lose. They would have gotten way of a higher ranking if they did win the SEC, but Vanderbilt's there. Who will Vanderbilt be playing? Speaking of Oklahoma State, they'll be playing the Oklahoma State University Cowboys. My goodness, this team had a great performance in the Big 12 Conference Tournament. They were expected to lose in their first game against Iowa State, but they beat the Cyclones by 21 points, and then in the semifinals, they beat Kansas by 1. They upset the Jayhawks, and then, sadly, they lost to Baylor in the championship game of the Big 12 tournament. But Oklahoma State, what a performance from them. We're going to move down to the lower half of the top half of the region. Who's the 5 seed in this matchup? The Iowa State Cyclones. This team has looked really good this season, but not a good performance in the Big 12 tournament. Sadly, they lost to Oklahoma State in their first game of the tournament, which is really sad for this team. And I feel like if they did win that game, they could have gotten higher up in the rankings. And who will Iowa State be playing? The USC Trojans. My goodness, do we have something to say about this team. This team was expected to play UCLA in the Pac-12 tournament, but then lost to Washington in their first match of the tournament, the opener round, and USC would have gotten probably a higher ranking if they did beat Washington, but they didn't, and now they are here playing Iowa State. Now we're going to reveal the 4th seed, which are the SMU Mustangs. This team has looked good all season long, winning the American regular season conference, and then winning the conference tournament. I mean, this team averages over 75 and over 80 points a game. SMU is such a high-scoring team, and they have a really good player, Ojale, who can really make them go far in the Midwest region. They'll be playing, though, the Providence Friars. Providence, not a good performance for them in the Big 12 tournament, or sorry, the Big East tournament. And that's why they're this low of a seed. It's because they lost to Creighton in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, and that is why they haven't gotten a high seed in this tournament. Well, now we're going to move down to the lower half of the Midwest region and reveal the 2 seed for you. That is the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky is a really popular team when it comes to the SEC, but they lost to the South Carolina Gamecocks in the SEC semifinals, which is really sad for them. I feel like they could have gotten the 1 seed if they did win the SEC, but they didn't. And who will Kentucky be playing? The Indiana Hoosiers. Usually Indiana has a higher seed than this, but they didn't have a good season at all. And they also, in the Big Ten tournament, lost to Iowa in their first game. Not a good performance from Indiana. We'll have to see what happens in that one. The 7th seed in this region, the Miami Hurricanes, a really good team in ACC, in an unexpected ACC championship from them. I mean, they made the ACC tournament as a 9 seed. They beat Syracuse, like upset North Carolina so much, costing them the 1 seed. They beat Duke, and then they beat Virginia Tech. And Miami, they won the ACC tournament, and they're just looking like such a strong team. Who will Miami be playing, though? They'll be playing the Badgers of Wisconsin. What a match this will be. Wisconsin has players like Cohen, Nigel Hayes, Ethan Happ. They have so many good players. We'll have to see what Wisconsin can do against this really red-hot Miami team. I will reveal the final part of the Midwest region, the 3 seed in the region, the UCLA Bruins. And man, oh man, now that we see that 3 seed and the 2 seed are UCLA and Kentucky, that could set up for a heck of a Sweet 16 match between the Bruins and the Wildcats. But who will UCLA be playing? The Georgetown Hoyas. This team for Georgetown has looked very, very, very good in the regular season, but then when it came to the Big East, they couldn't even make it past Villanova, because that is a very, very, very tough matchup. But Georgetown, they're looking like a strong team. We'll have to see if they can actually do it against UCLA. The 6th seed in the Midwest region, the Michigan Wolverines, an unexpected team in the Big Ten tournament who made it far in the tournament. They did beat Illinois, then they upset Purdue, upset Minnesota by 1, but then lost to Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. Michigan's looking strong. They have a really, really good senior point guard. But who will they be playing? The California Golden Bears. And man, oh man, when I look at this matchup, I see such an incredible matchup in the first round already. California is such a team that's just potential for an upset. California, the games that I watched for their season, they have upset so many teams, and they almost upset Oregon in the Pac-12 semifinals. This matchup's going to be really, 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 really good. Now we take a look at the full top half of the Midwest region, and what I see out of this Midwest region is I see a potential Kansas-SMU matchup in the Sweet 16, which could be really good. Ojale versus Josh Jackson. But I see, to be honest, I see a pretty easy run for the Kansas Jayhawks into the Elite Eight. I don't really see a lot of. The only really team that I could see kind of scaring Kansas is SMU. But as we move down to the bottom half of the Midwest region, we have what I see out of this region is 2 really, really, really good first-round matchups. Michigan and California, and Miami and Wisconsin. This matchup couldn't be any better. And my goodness, I can't wait to see these 2 matchups. And then I also see a really good potential Sweet 16 matchup between UCLA and Kentucky. But other than that, I see a possibility at a Kentucky-Kansas Elite 8 matchup, which could be really good. A rematch of the 2012 NCAA National Championship. Well, now we're going to take a quick break again. We've revealed 2 out of the 4 regions, and we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. We are back here with the NCAA May Madness 2017 selection show. We revealed 2 out of the 4 regions. We revealed the Midwest and East region, but now we're going to be revealing the South region. Let's get straight into it. So now here we go, revealing the South region. The 3rd overall #1 seed in the NCAA tournament are the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Gonzaga, they were looking strong. They almost went undefeated in the NCAA season, but they lost to BYU in their last game of the season, which was really, really, really sad for them. And Gonzaga, they're a really strong team. They have Karnowski in the middle, Williams, Goss on the outside, Perkins, Williams, Collins in the middle. They have so many good players. But who will Gonzaga be playing? They will be playing the 16 seed Oklahoma Sooners. Such a powerful team, Oklahoma. I mean, they did upset TCU in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, but then lost to Kansas. But I don't know. I don't really see any 16 seeds upsetting 1 seed so far from what we revealed. So now we'll move on to the 8 seed and 9 seed. The 8 seed, the St. Mary's Gales. My goodness, St. Mary's. They put up a pretty good fight in the West Coast Conference Championship game against Gonzaga, and I can see them going pretty far in this tournament if they can make this upset against Gonzaga in the second round. That's a second round possibility match. But who will St. Mary's be playing? The Marquette Golden Eagles. Marquette, my goodness, I wish they had a better chance. I mean, they have such a tough team, but like they're playing such good teams in this top half of the region. We'll have to see what they can do. I'll move down to the bottom half of the top half of the region. Who's the 5 seed in the South region? The South Carolina Gamecocks, SEC champions, looking so strong. They beat Alabama. Then they upset Kentucky, and then they beat Vanderbilt by 1 point in the SEC championship game. But who will South Carolina be playing? The Syracuse Orange, a team that just did not have a good tournament run in the ACC. They lost to Miami in their first game, and it wasn't really expected for them to lose to Miami. But we'll have to see what Syracuse can do in this matchup against South Carolina in the first round. But who's the 4th seed in the region? The Arizona Wildcats. Not a good performance in the Pac-12 tournament at all from them. In their first match in the Pac-12, they lost to the Colorado Buffaloes, which was unexpected, and a lot of people had Arizona going all the way to the championship game of the Pac-12. In my opinion, I wouldn't send Arizona far in the tournament. And in my opinion, I would just make them lose to South Carolina or TCU, because the next team that they're facing are the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU, they didn't play very good in the Big 12 tournament, which is why they got the 13th seed. They lost to Oklahoma in their first matchup, which is not very good for them. But I feel like they have an upset potential match against Arizona in their first round matchup. Let's go to the bottom half of the region. The 2 seed in the South region are the North Carolina Tar Heels. It's sad for them because they should have kept the 1 seed. But if it wasn't for them losing to Miami in their first match of the ACC tournament, they would have been able to keep the 1 seed. But now they have the 2 seed. And who will North Carolina be playing? The UConn Huskies, a team that's known for unexpected tournament runs, but I don't really know about that this year because they don't have the team that they had in 2011 or in 2014. We'll have to see what UConn can do against North Carolina, though. The 7th seed in the South region are the Virginia Cavaliers. Not a good performance at all, and man, oh man, did they move down a ton from the bracketology. The bracketology had them at the 5th seed spot, and now they're at the 7th seed. Virginia lost in their first game of the tournament, in the ACC tournament. I'll be right back. Here, Virginia did not have a good performance in the ACC tournament. I mean, the first game they lost to Georgia Tech, which is not good for them. But we'll have to move on to see who they play. The Illinois State Redbirds, and man, oh man, Missouri Valley Conference champions helped them get into this tournament. I'm just so happy for them. I mean, they have a they have a pretty high seed for what they are. This is one of their first times in the NCAA tournament, and they have a first-round matchup against Virginia. But it's going to be really tough when they play North Carolina if they do. Now, the 3 seed in the South region, the Florida Gators. The Florida Gators did not play a good SEC conference tournament. They lost to Vanderbilt in their first game of the tournament, and that's just sad, man. And I feel like they should have moved down except moved up, but they will be playing the Texas Longhorns, and man, is this an upset potential or what? Texas upset West Virginia in the Big 12 quarterfinals, and they almost upset Baylor in the Big 12 semifinals, and Florida lost to Vanderbilt in the SEC quarterfinals. So just be wary of this upset. The 6th seed in the South region, the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern Big Ten Conference champions, made it very, very far before winning the Big Ten for the first time in school history. Now they're in the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history, and they're the 6th seed. Let's see what they can do against Georgia Tech / VCU, a first 4 11 seed matchup. In the first 4, this is just really exciting for Northwestern, but they have a really, really tough team to face out of this first 4 matchup. VCU, they were the runner-up of the Atlantic 10 Conference tournament. They lost to Rhode Island in the championship game, and then Georgia Tech made a huge run in the ACC tournament, making history in the ACC conference and becoming the first team in conference history to play an opener round match in the conference tournament and make it all the way to the semifinals. So yeah, now we're gonna take a look at the top half of the South region, and what I see out of this match is a potential at a South Carolina Gonzaga Sweet 16 matchup. I mean, South Carolina's a really, really strong team, and I don't really feel that fond of Arizona, and I feel like Gonzaga can pretty much sweep through into the Elite Eight. And then for the bottom half of the South region, I see I think if Texas can upset Florida, I see Northwestern possibly making it to the Sweet 16 against North Carolina in their first ever NCAA tournament. But other than that, I see a possibility at an awesome Elite 8 match between North Carolina and Gonzaga. We'll have to see though what happens in that one. So now we're gonna take we've revealed 3 out of the 4 regions of the NCAA bracket. We're gonna take a look at the 4th region right after this short break. Welcome back, everybody, to the NCAA Main Madness 2017 Selection Sunday show. We're only a couple days away from the first 4 of the NCAA tournament. It's today, tomorrow, the next day, Wednesday, and then the first 4 will be on Thursday. But now we're going to reveal to you the 4th Out of 4 regions, that's the West. Now, for the West region, the 4th and final overall 1 seed are the Duke Blue Devils. I know a lot of people are surprised by that, but Duke had a pretty good ACC tournament run. They beat NC State in the first round of the ACC tournament, and then they beat Louisville in the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. They lose to Miami, but Duke, they're looking strong. They have a really, really good coach. Let's see what they can do. The 16th seed that they will be playing are the Washington Huskies. Now, to be honest, Washington would not be in this tournament if it wasn't for their win against USC in the opener round of the Pac-12 tournament. If it wasn't for their win against USC, Washington would not be in the tournament. Now, the 8th seed in the West region are the Virginia Tech Hokies. My goodness, this team made it all the way to the ACC championship game with wins over Wake Forest and an upset over Florida State, and then another win over Georgia Tech. But then they lost to Miami. Virginia Tech is looking like a strong team. And who will they play? Xavier. Xavier made it also all the way to the Big East championship game before losing to Villanova. Xavier beat DePaul, then they upset Butler and Creighton, and then almost upset Villanova. They only lost by 5 points. That's an exciting 8-9 matchup to watch out for. Now, the 5 seed in the South region are the Creighton Blue Jays. Creighton upset Providence in the Big East tournament and then lost to Xavier by 7 points. But this team is still a really, really powerful team to reckon with. And I can see them going also pretty far in this tournament too. But who will Creighton be playing? The 12th seed NC State Wolfpack. NC State beat Clemson in the ACC tournament opener round. Then they lost to Duke. So I have to see what NC State can do. It's going to be exciting to see that. Butler. The Bulldogs of Butler are the 4th seed in the South region. Butler did lose to Xavier in the opener match of the Big East tournament, which was really sad for them. I feel like they could have gotten a higher seed than that. We'll have to see what Butler can do when they play the Auburn Tigers. Auburn did make a huge run in the SEC tournament, which really did help them in trying to get into the NCAA tournament. I feel like a lot of people didn't expect them to get into the NCAA tournament, but then they upset Arkansas and upset Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, then lost to Vanderbilt, which is really exciting for Auburn. Now, we move down to the bottom half of the West region. The 2 seed in this region are the Baylor Bears, Big 12 Conference champions. This is the highest seed that they have ever gotten in school history in the NCAA tournament. They won the Big 12 tournament, and man, oh man, are they looking strong. It's just really exciting for them. We'll have to see who they play. The Belmont Bruins. Belmont is the team that won their conference after being the conference champions of the regular season. Belmont won their conference easily, and now are playing Baylor as the 15th seed. The 7th seed in the West region, the Maryland Terrapins, looking strong with Melo Trimble, but they did lose in their first game of the Big Ten tournament to Northwestern, who went on to win the Big Ten tournament. That's why they got such a low seed. We'll have to see who Maryland will play. The Rhode Island Rams, Atlantic 10 Conference champions. They beat Dayton, and then they upset VCU as well to win the conference tournament. And I don't know how long it's been since Rhode Island's been in the tournament, but they're finally here. And man, oh man, can they pull off these upsets. Now, the 3 seed in the West region are the Purdue Boilermakers. Man, Purdue, they just did not have a good Big Ten tournament. And it's kind of sad because they lost to Michigan, but you need to watch out for Michigan. Purdue has Caleb Swanigan. We'll have to see who they will play, though. The Utah Utes. Usually Utah has a higher ranking than this. They had the 5 seed ranking in 2015. They had the 3 seed ranking in 2016, and now they have the 14 seed in 2017. Let's see what Utah can do against Purdue and their experience in the NCAA tournament. The 6th seed are the Florida State Seminoles in the West region. Florida State did lose in their opener round, in their first match of the ACC tournament to Virginia Tech in overtime. So Florida State can get upset easily. And who will they be playing? The Iowa Hawkeyes, a team that managed to make a huge run in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, they beat Indiana, they upset Wisconsin, and then they almost upset Northwestern. I would be wary of this upset pick for Florida State. Now we'll take a look at the top half of the West region, and what I see in this matchup is a potential at a second round matchup between Duke and Xavier, which could be a really phenomenal matchup. Xavier can pull off upsets, and Duke is a team that is prone to upsets. I have to see if Duke can make it to the Sweet 16, because Duke has a really tough run to the Sweet 6 or to the Elite 8, because their Butler or Creighton is on their way, and Xavier. The bottom half of the West region, the Florida State Seminoles versus Iowa, that's a potential at an upset. Don't miss out on that one. Iowa could totally upset Florida State, but be careful who you pick. And then I also see a potential at a Purdue and Baylor matchup in the Sweet 16, which could be really exciting. Caleb Swanigan versus Jonathan Motley. And then I also see Rhode Island at a possibility at a Sweet 16 too, if Rhode Island could beat Maryland and Baylor. Now we're going to take a look. Now we've revealed all the regions to you. We're going to take a look at the 1 seeds. Villanova, Kansas, Gonzaga, and Duke. And I see Villanova with Josh Hart. Their coach is on fire. He's really good. Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Chris Jenkins. This team is only missing Ochefu and Arcidiacono from last year's national championship team. For Kansas, Josh Jackson, Frank Mason, their coach, Bill Self. This team's looking strong as well. For Gonzaga, if they make it to the Final Four, that's gonna be their first time in school history in the Final Four. This team doesn't have a lot of experience in the Final Four, so if you're sending them to the Final Four, be wary of experience. And then for Duke, Coach K is one of the best Hall of Fame coaches in the nation. Be careful of Duke and sending them to the Final Four, even the Elite 8, because they have a really tough road in their region. Now we're gonna see the first 4 matchups. The first day of the NCAA tournament, which is first 4, which will be this upcoming Thursday. The first match will be Georgia and Central Michigan. This matchup will be exciting, and this will decide who will play the Villanova Wildcats in the first round. And then the second match after that will be the 11 seed matchup between VCU and Georgia Tech to decide who will play Northwestern in the South region. And what I see out of this is a possibility at a Georgia-Villanova first-round matchup. I don't really see Central Michigan moving on. Georgia has experience in the tournament. This is the first time that Central Michigan's ever made it into the tournament. And then I also see Georgia Tech beating VCU, because Georgia Tech is a team that can pull off upsets. And if Georgia Tech can pull off upsets, it's going to be a tough first-round matchup for Northwestern. I'm going to move on to the second day of the first 4. Pittsburgh versus Ohio State will be the first matchup. 16 seed matchup, which will decide who will be playing Kansas. And then Michigan State and Wichita State will be the second matchup, which will be the 11 seed first 4 matchup, which will decide who will be playing Notre Dame. And I'm sorry, guys. If you guys look at the bottom right, I accidentally put a 16 seed instead of an 11 seed. I'm so sorry. That is a complete mess up on my part. But what I see out of this is Ohio State definitely moving on to play Pittsburgh. Ohio State is a potential 16 seed upset, but I don't see it happening over Kansas. And then I see Wichita State over Michigan State, because Wichita State is just a more experienced team. And then it's going to be a tough matchup for Notre Dame in the first round. And I actually see a possibility at a Wichita State upset over Notre Dame. Now we're going to move on to the bubbles bursted. The Memphis Tigers, the Texas A&M Aggies, and the Mississippi State, whatever they're called. But Memphis got their bubble bursted because they only made it to the semifinals of the American Conference. If they made it to the championship game, then they would have made it into the tournament, but they lost to SMU. Texas A&M lost in their first game of the SEC tournament to Vanderbilt, and then Mississippi State also lost to Alabama, and if they won that one, they would have made it into the tournament as well. So, sad for them. I feel like the committee got this one right. I feel like none of these teams should be in the NCAA tournament. And then the last 4 in the NCAA tournament are the Central Michigan Chippewas, the Georgia Bulldogs, the Pittsburgh Panthers, and the Ohio State Buckeyes. So guys, that's going to do it for the selection show. Now we are going to go on a quick commercial break, and then we're going to send it to our bracketologist expert, which is me, because I'm the only one here. But we're gonna allow me to pick the first ever NCAA May Madness bracket. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to pick the NCAA bracket, the first ever bracket for the May Madness tournament. Okay, we're gonna start out with the first matchup here in the East region: Villanova versus Central Michigan. Let's just go over here. Okay, Villanova versus Central Michigan / Georgia. Well, I see Georgia moving out of that first 4 matchup against Central Michigan. Georgia has better experience, and Central Michigan, this is their first time in the tournament, but I don't see any 116 upsets this year. I'm going to pick Villanova to move on in that one. The next matchup, I'm sorry guys, my scroll wheel is a little messed up, so you might see, like, even though I'm trying to scroll down, it might scroll up on accident. But the next matchup is the Dayton Flyers and the Arkansas Razorbacks, an 8-9 matchup. Man, this matchup is tough, I know, but I feel like Arkansas chokes a lot. Arkansas did choke in the SEC tournament, and Dayton can totally win this game. They're a pretty good home team, and this is a virtual home game for Dayton. So I'm going to have to go with the Flyers of Dayton to move on out of that one to the second round. And then West Virginia versus Colorado. Now, this could be a potential upset matchup, and just be wary of this because Colorado can totally manage to upset West Virginia in this matchup, but I don't see it happening. I don't think West Virginia is that prone to upsets. I think they have a super good team. Their coach is really experienced. I'm going to have to go with the Mountaineers of West Virginia. The next match is the 4-13 matchup between Minnesota. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Minnesota versus Alabama. Now, this matchup is a possibility at an upset, too, but I don't really see it. I think Minnesota's a really good team. They have a really good player, Lynch. He's a really good center. They have a really good outside shooting team, and I think Rick Pitino did really good in this season today. I'm gonna have to go Minnesota. So Notre Dame versus Michigan State / Wichita State. I'm gonna have to pick Wichita State to beat Michigan State in that first 4 matchup. I don't think Tom Izzo's team's good enough to win in the first 4 this year. I think Wichita State got ranked a little. I think they got a little underseeded this year. And I'm actually going to have to pick Wichita State over Notre Dame. I think Wichita State could totally pull off this upset against Notre Dame. It's a total possibility, and just don't count it out. Next matchup would be the 14-3 matchup of St. John's and Louisville. Now, this could also be an upset potential, but I actually see Louisville coming out on top in this one. I think their team is really good. I don't think their team is that bad to lose that game. I'm going to have to pick the Louisville Cardinals on this one. Cincinnati versus Seton Hall. Now, Seton Hall is a really good defensive team and a really good offensive team too. Cincinnati is a really good offensive team, but I think Cincinnati scores way more points per game than Seton Hall, and Cincinnati is just looking like a strong team. I'm going to have to pick the Bearcats of Cincinnati. Then Oregon, San Diego State. That's not even a question in my opinion. Oregon wins that one. Okay, let's just keep on doing the East region. We're going to go to the second round, Villanova and Dayton. I don't think Dayton's good enough to beat Villanova in this one. I think the Wildcats are just too strong for the Flyers. They have a really good team. I don't think there's going to be an 8-1 matchup. Oh, I don't think there's going to be an 8-1 upset or a 9-1 upset in the first round. Now we go to West Virginia versus Minnesota. Now this is going to be a heck of a matchup. These two teams are so evenly matched up. But in the end, I don't see Minnesota being able. I mean, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of tournament experience. West Virginia does. I'm going to have to go with the West Virginia Mountaineers. Now, Wichita State versus Louisville. We know how much Louisville can choke in the NCAA tournament. And I like Wichita State. They got underseeded, I'm telling you. So I'm going to have to go with the Shockers of Wichita State to move on into the Sweet 16. And then Cincinnati versus Oregon. Now, a lot of people can think this is a potential upset matchup, but I don't think it's an upset. I think the Oregon Ducks are going to move on. I mean, they did win the Pac-12 tournament for a reason. They're a heck of a good team, and I have them moving on pretty far into the tournament. Villanova versus West Virginia. I mean, this isn't even a question in my opinion. I don't really know if West Virginia can make it out even against Colorado or against Minnesota. I picked them this far, but I don't think they're going to be able to beat Villanova. I think Villanova is just way too tough of a team right now to get upset like that. And then Wichita State versus Oregon. I think Wichita State will put up a pretty good fight against Oregon, but I think the Pac-12 champions will persevere this time. I mean, they have really good players. Dylan Brooks, Tyler Dorsey, Chris Boucher, Jordan Bell, Ennis. They have some really good players on that team, so I'm going to have to go with Oregon. And then Elite 8 matchup. I'm telling you, this matchup is going to be a heck of a matchup in the Elite 8. Villanova versus Oregon. I mean, you can't write this down. But I don't know, man. This one's so tough because there's a lot of tough 2-1 matchups. If all the 2-1s go to the Elite 8, there's a lot of tough 2-1 matchups. But in the end, I'm going to have to go with Oregon to the Final Four for the first time in 78 years. So, I mean, I just think the Ducks have way better players than Villanova right now. And if Villanova had Arcidiacono and Ochefu like last year, I would send them to the Final Four. But Oregon's too tough for them. Now we're going to move on to the Midwest region. Kansas versus Ohio State / Pittsburgh. I have Ohio State moving on against Pittsburgh. I think Ohio State's the better team on this one. But I'm telling you, there's no 1-16 upsets this year, so I'm going to have to go with Kansas. Vanderbilt versus Oklahoma State. We know how good of a matchup this is, but I think Vanderbilt's a little bit of a tougher team than Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State does have a really, really efficient offense, but I think Vanderbilt has just the better team in general. Iowa State versus USC. USC lost in their first game against Washington. I don't think there's any way that they can beat Iowa State. In this one, I just don't think USC has the firepower that they did last year when they made it to the tournament as an 8 seed. SMU versus Providence. I don't think it's going to be happening for the Providence Friars this year like last year when they did upset USC and then almost upset North Carolina. I think SMU is going to move on. Ojale is just such a powerful player. You just can't beat him. Michigan and Cal. This is one of the toughest matchups of the first round. I mean, this is such a tough matchup. California is a team that can pull off so many good upsets against teams of all natures. And then Michigan is a team that knows just the game of basketball really well. But Michigan's a good home team. And this is a virtual home game for Michigan. But California's a really good away team. This is a virtual away game for California. But in the end, I feel like I'm just going to have to go with Michigan with my gut here. I know that's going to be a really tough game for people to decide. And then for UCLA and Georgetown, this one's tough. No, it's not. I'm going to have to go with UCLA. Lonzo Ball's too strong. Georgetown can't handle it. I say that if Georgetown can't beat Villanova in the quarterfinals of the Big East tournament, they're not going to be able to beat UCLA. Miami versus... Oh, sorry. Miami versus Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin chokes a lot because they did choke in the Big Ten tournament against Iowa. Wisconsin just has not impressed me this year. I'm going to have to go with Miami. Miami did win the ACC Conference Tournament, so the Hurricanes are better. And then Kentucky versus Indiana. It's an easy win for the Wildcats at Kentucky. Indiana's not as good as they were last year when they did upset Kentucky in the second round of the tournament. We move on to the second round of the tournament. Kansas versus Vanderbilt, the second round matchup. I don't think Vanderbilt's good enough to beat Kansas. I think the Jayhawks are going to move on. Josh Jackson's a powerful team. I mean, not a powerful team, a powerful player. And then Iowa State versus SMU. If Iowa State can't beat Oklahoma State in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, I think SMU is going to beat them. Ojale is just such a powerful player. I think the Mustangs of SMU are going to be able to move on into the Sweet 16 over Iowa State. Now, Michigan and UCLA, this is a potential upset matchup. And you know what? I don't really trust Lonzo Ball that much. I think they're a little cocky, but man, this is such a tough matchup. I'm actually going to have to pick the upset right now and go with Michigan over UCLA. I don't think Lonzo Ball's team's good enough to beat Michigan in the run that the Wolverines are on right now. And then Kentucky versus Miami. I know a lot of people can pick this as the upset game because Miami did win the ACC conference and stuff like that, but I think Kentucky's the better team. They have a lot of good players like Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox. I'm going to have to go with the Wildcats of Kentucky. Now, the Sweet 16. SMU versus Kansas. Now, this will be a heck of a good matchup. Ojale versus Jackson. These teams are evenly matched up. But in the end, I think Kansas got picked as the 1 seed for a reason. And I think the Kansas Jayhawks are going to move on to the Elite 8 and have a chance of playing for the Final Four. And then Michigan versus Kentucky. I know a lot of people will pick this as an upset too, since Kentucky did lose in the SEC semifinals to South Carolina. And Michigan is a top-tier team. But I'm going to have to go with Kentucky. I think Kentucky's just the better team. And this will set up, I mean, it's kind of sad that this year there's a lot of 1-2 matchups in my bracket. But I'm going to have to go with Kentucky to move on into the Final Four over Kansas. I think Kansas really does not do good in Elite 8 matchups. I think they don't do good. If Kansas is a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, they just don't do good in the Elite 8 matchups. I think Kentucky's a heck of a good team. Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, Kentucky can do it. Now we're going to move down into the West region. Duke and Washington. There's no doubt about that one. Duke will move on. Xavier versus Virginia Tech is a tough matchup to decide. But I feel like Xavier's the better team on this one. Because Virginia Tech just does not play good defense, in my opinion. I mean, their game against Miami did not impress me at all. Virginia Tech has trouble playing good defense, but they played really good offense. But defense wins championships, what I learned from recent tournaments. We move down to the 5-12 matchup, Creighton and NC State. I think a lot of people will pick this one as an upset match too. But Creighton is a team that plays really well. I mean, they did upset Providence in the first round of the Big East tournament. I don't think Creighton will be upset in the first round of the tournament. And then Butler versus Auburn. This is a total upset. Like, I can see this as an upset so well. Auburn upset Ole Miss in Arkansas in the SEC tournament, and Butler lost to Xavier in their first match. But Xavier is not like Auburn. Xavier is 10 times better than Auburn, and they should have been ranked higher in the Big East tournament. So I'm gonna have to go Butler on that one. Florida State versus Iowa. Now this is my upset pick in here. I think Iowa's gonna move on. I think Florida State chokes a lot. I haven't really been impressed with them this season. And I'm kind of happy that they did get the 6th seed because Iowa, I have been impressed with them. Iowa can shoot well. Iowa can score well. I'm going to pick the Hawkeyes. And then Purdue versus Utah. Caleb Swanigan is too strong. And Utah is just not good enough this year to really do anything in the NCAA tournament. Maryland versus Rhode Island. This is also a really good first round matchup. Another 7-10 matchup that is super good. I mean, if we go up higher, Cincinnati Seton Hall is really good. Miami, Wisconsin, super duper spectacular. And Maryland and Rhode Island, I'm going to have to go with the Rams. And the Rams won the Atlantic 10 Conference for a reason. They're a team that can do that thing. They're a team that can win. Milo Trimble and Maryland lost in their first game of the Big Ten tournament. Rhode Island it is. And then Baylor and Belmont, I don't think Belmont can get the upset this year over a 2 seed. I mean, they almost got the upset against Virginia, I think in 2015, but Belmont's not going to be able to upset Baylor this year. We move up into the second round, Duke versus Xavier. Now this is the matchup that I was talking about that can be the upset match. Man, like this is such an upset potential matchup. And you know what? I think it's going to happen this year for Duke. I think Xavier's going to upset the Blue Devils of Duke. I think Xavier's just a better team. I mean, Duke can choke a lot, I know, but I mean, I don't know, guys. I wouldn't take my opinion, but I'm not really impressed with Duke this season. So I'm gonna have to go with the Xavier Musketeers. Creighton versus Butler. I like Butler and all, but I just don't like their ability to play good basketball. I mean, if Butler plays Xavier, they're gonna lose. I'm gonna have to go with Creighton on this one to set up a Big East semifinal rematch, which will be really good in the Sweet 16. Iowa versus Purdue. I like Iowa. I like their play style, but I like Caleb Swanigan and the Purdue Boilermakers. Purdue has just a super good team this year, and no wonder they got the 3 seed because I feel like they're going to move far in this tournament. And then Rhode Island versus Baylor. I like Baylor to move on out of this one. They have some really good players like LeCompte, Jonathan Motley, Lowell Aquila Jr. They have some really good players. I don't think Rhode Island can hang with Baylor in this matchup. Sweet 16, Xavier versus Creighton. I know a lot of people are going to be picking Creighton on this one, but I'm going to have to go with Xavier. I think the 9 seed is going to make it into the Elite 8 because Xavier is such a strong team. I feel like Xavier should have gotten a higher ranking than what they are right now, but we'll have to see what they can do. And then Purdue versus Baylor. I think Caleb Swanigan is better than Jonathan Motley and all, but Purdue doesn't have the players that are really that good. I think Baylor's going to move on into the Elite 8. And then an Elite 8 matchup between Xavier and Baylor. I'm sorry, Baylor, but you guys are not going to make it to the Final Four yet. I think Xavier, the 9 seed, the Xavier Musketeers are going to move on into the Final Four. They have such a strong team, such an efficient offense, such a good defense. Xavier is looking strong. And if Xavier can get that upset against Duke in the second round, it's going to be tough for Xavier to move on through the first round. But if they can get that upset in the second round, I think that they can make it all the way to the Final Four. Now we move on into the South region, Gonzaga versus Oklahoma. I said I didn't see any 116 upsets this year. St. Mary's versus Marquette. This one's tough, I know. Marquette has an efficient offense, but they don't have an efficient defense, and St. Mary's really impressed me in their game against Gonzaga, so I'm going to have to go with the Gales and St. Mary's. Now, South Carolina versus Syracuse. This is, a lot of people I feel like can pick this as one as an upset, but I feel like this is a really easy pick for me. I'm going to have to go with South Carolina. I mean, they won the SEC for a reason. They're a good team. They won the SEC conference. So I'm going to have to pick the Gamecocks. And then Arizona versus TCU. Now, this is one of my 4-13 upset picks. I'm not very confident with Arizona this year, so I'm going to have to go with the TCU Horned Frogs on this one. Northwestern versus Georgia Tech. So that's VCU. I think Georgia Tech is going to beat VCU. I think Georgia Tech is a really good team. But I don't think Georgia Tech's going to be able to upset Northwestern. I think Northwestern's a super good team. They showed us that Northwestern is. They showed us that they're a really good team in the Big Ten tournament. I think they can do that good. And then this is one of my 3-14 upsets. I think I'm gonna have to pick Texas. I really don't pick a team that I'm not confident in, and I'm not confident in Florida. I haven't watched many of their games this year, but I'm just not confident in their performance against Vanderbilt in the SEC Conference tournament. So I'm going to have to go with Texas. Virginia versus Illinois State. I could see this upset happening, but I just don't see it happening in this tournament. I'm going to have to pick Virginia. Virginia's a really good team. London Parentes, Kyle Guy. I mean, they have a really good coach. So I'm going to have to go with the Virginia Cavaliers. And then North Carolina versus UConn. UConn's not going to have a crazy year this year. North Carolina's going to move on. Gonzaga versus St. Mary's. I'm going to have to go with the Bulldogs. If the Bulldogs could beat St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference Championship game, Gonzaga can beat St. Mary's in the NCAA tournament. South Carolina versus TCU. I could see this upset happening. If TCU can upset Arizona, they can upset South Carolina. But I don't really see it happening. I don't see it happening. I'm going to have to pick the Gamecocks. They're a really strong team. And I'm going to have to let them move on into the Sweet 16. Northwestern versus Texas. Texas can pull off the upset, but the Wildcats are too strong. I mean, they have a lot of good players. That I can't really name off the top of my head right now. Fine, one player that I know for Northwestern that's really good is Brown. Brown can shoot threes. He can go into the lane, get a layup, and he can play really good defense. Northwestern, in their first ever NCAA tournament, are going to move into the Sweet 16. Now, the final second round matchup, Virginia versus North Carolina. I like Virginia, but I feel like they just can't beat North Carolina. North Carolina's too strong for them. Joel Berry. I mean, North Carolina basically has the same team as they did last year in the NCAA National Championship game, which really favors them in my bracket. Gonzaga versus South Carolina in the Sweet 16. I like the Gamecocks. I like their style of play, but Gonzaga is not a team that messes around. I think the Bulldogs are going to move into the Elite Eight. And then Northwestern versus North Carolina. I like North Carolina. I mean, I like Northwestern. I really do like North Carolina. North Carolina has a lot of experience in the tournament. This is the first year of the tournament for Northwestern. Who knows if they're even going to make it to the Sweet 16. So I'm going to have to go with the Tar Heels of North Carolina. And then Gonzaga versus North Carolina. I'm going to have to go with the Tar Heels. I like North Carolina over Gonzaga because North Carolina almost has the same team as they did last year in the national championship game. I think they're missing like one player, which is Marcus Page. And Gonzaga, even if they do make it to the Final Four, they're not an experienced team in the Final Four. So here we go, Final Four picks. We'll just start with the first game, Xavier versus Oregon. I like Xavier. I like their play style, but Oregon are the Pac-12 champions, and I like their gameplay. I'm gonna have to pick Oregon over Xavier, and then in Kentucky versus North Carolina. And you know, if this actually does happen, this will be the first time since 2000 and I don't even know when the last time was. Oh yeah, the first time since 2011 that no one seeds had made the NCAA Final Four. In 2011, it was 11 at VCU, 8 Butler, 3 UConn, and 4 Kentucky that made the Final Four. If this actually happens, it'll be 9 Xavier, 2 Oregon, 2 Kentucky, 2 North Carolina. There we go. I'm picking North Carolina to the national championship. They have the same team as they did last year. Kentucky doesn't have the same team, but I don't think they're good enough to beat North Carolina. They have to send the Tar Heels to the national championship. And then in the national championship game, Oregon versus North Carolina. I like Oregon. I like their play style. I like all their players. Tyler Dorsey, Dylan Brooks, Chris Boucher. But I like North Carolina because they have the same team as they did last year. Almost the same team, sorry. And they could totally manage to win the national championship this year. I'm going to have to pick the North Carolina Tar Heels as my 2017 NCAA May Madness bracket national champions. I really like them this year. I don't think they're gonna be. I don't think they're gonna lose this year. So thank you guys for witnessing this. Thank you guys so much for watching the NCAA May Madness Selection Show 2017. I hope you guys enjoyed, and make sure you go over to Brackify.com. I'm sorry. make sure you go over to Brackify.com to vote in the NCAA May Madness bracket. As you can see, this is the 2017 May Madness official bracket. Make sure you go. It's open right now. Unless you're watching this after May 26th, it will not be open. But if you're watching this May 21st through May 26th, it's open, guys. Go vote right now on Brackify.com. I hope you guys enjoyed the selection show and have a great time in the tournament. We'll see you in the tournament. It starts on May 25th with the first 4 matches.